Former U.S. Deputy Military Rep to NATO, Brigadier General Blaine Holt joins me now, as well as former F-16 Thunderbird pilot Ryan Bodenheimer. Great to have you both with us here. General, I'm going to start with you. Do you think that China's approach, essentially their hard line as it relates to Taiwan, was that a good strategy on their part?
It was an expected strategy. They're all saying the things that we would expect them to say in an uncomfortable subject that no one wants to say anything. It does look like we're going to go back to this concept of strategic ambiguity. Taiwan is something that the Chinese politics has to get out there for their own people. The whole reason they want Taiwan is they don't want the entire mainland seeing that a thriving, prosperous, democratic Taiwan. Why can't they have all that freedom and prosperity? And so, no, this is actually the way it should go. Both men avoided that uncomfortable hurdle, which had to come up, and they got after a whole lot of other far more important things. And Xi Jinping actually is handling this visit, I think, quite responsibly. It could go far worse than it's going.
I want to get your thoughts on this, Ryan. Here's what Secretary of State Marco Rubio said about Taiwan after the meeting.
They certainly feel that way, and they always raise that issue, and we understand they raise that issue. From our perspective, any forced change in the status quo and the situation that's there now would be bad for both countries. Our policies on that have not changed. It's been pretty consistent across multiple presidential administrations and remains consistent now. U.S. policy on the issue of Taiwan is unchanged as of today and as of the meeting that we had here today. It was raised. They always raise it on their side. We always make clear our position, and we move on to the other topics.
Yeah, you know, Ryan, not different from what the general said as well. This is sort of expected business as usual as Taiwan goes. But we also know that there is a $14 billion arms package to Taiwan on the president's desk. He has not signed it yet. So potentially a little bit of strategy there. And what does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. That's insightful to think of it that way. It's good to see you, Katrina and Blaine. I think this is kind of great power horse trading at work, which is the way diplomacy needs to be at this level. And so what I think President Trump's doing extremely well is potentially a little bit of pressuring to decouple the Chinese government from Iran. So maybe if we can get the Chinese government to stop buying 2 million barrels of oil a day once this blockade ends and start buying that sweet, sweet Texas crude, that crude from North Dakota. Right now it's about 500,600,000 or so is what China buys from the U.S. So if we can decouple that and have China align more with the U.S. and maybe take a little bit of heat off the Taiwan arms deal, you're just seeing a great deal maker at work.
I think that's right, General Holt. Let's talk a little bit more about that specifically. Could President Trump actually get China to get oil from the United States through Iran and the Strait of Hormuz? Would that be a better, I will say, strategy in terms of our relationship with China?
I think it's a temporary one. And the reason I say that is because if you go through the data, while it looks like we're in this wonderful bathtub of oil and such an oil extravaganza going on here, we are a net exporter of oil, but we're in an oil shortage. And the reason that's so is because of our refining capacity coming down. You've had no less than 45 terror and isolated incident attacks affecting oil storage and refining. And then you've got California that wants to shut down the last of its refineries down to one. So what's the long-term solution? The long-term solution is, hey, look, China, it's a commodity. Get it from our friends in Venezuela. That would benefit us. Or you can get it from Iran. Once we have a free Iran, you'll be paying retail price for it. And that's fair, too, something the Chinese are unaccustomed to on the world trade stage. But in this immediate short term, alleviating Chinese pressure keeps them on the sidelines geopolitically while we finish off the Iran question.
Ryan, I want to get your thoughts on this. Okay, let's get back to Taiwan a little bit, and specifically that issue of the semiconductors and how much that helps, of course, AI and also defense. We know that rare earth minerals also a big topic here globally, but especially in these talks. Now, we also know that neon is one of the most important rare earth minerals that goes into these chip production, and Ukraine happens to be one of the primary sources of neon. And now stay with me here, because we know that the United States also has a rare earth deal going into place with Ukraine. I was talking to my friend and colleague Carl Higbee about this a little bit earlier this afternoon, and it is interesting. Sometimes we look at these global relationships through very focused lenses from country to country, but we're now seeing how all of these things, all of these countries, all of these wars essentially are interconnected. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Katrina, leave it to you to bring up a 4D chess situation. I mean, absolutely, they're all connected. And when it comes to tungsten, neon, these different minerals that are needed, everything from Patriot missile batteries to the actual tips of the high explosive rounds that an F-35 would carry, it's all connected and it's all important. And so what I think we're seeing happen here are just deals being made. And ultimately, when it comes to Iran, Taiwan, Ukraine, it all goes back to those rare earth minerals. They're so important for defense. And really, I think President Trump has that in mind. He's doing some pretty cool things, too, as far as giving a little bit of a carrot, you know, with 200 Boeing aircraft being essentially inked to be sold to China. So things like that, I think he's showing, hey, China, let's make some deals instead of fighting and bickering over these rare earth minerals. Let's work together. Let's make these deals, and let's all try to win and come out on top. And I think it's good statesmanship.
General, we also know, speaking of good statesmanship, that the President Trump has invited President Xi to the United States for a visit in September, showing that obviously conversations will be ongoing. What is your overall takeaway from that? What happens next?
So that's a great positive. And so it's so important to not play down that next visit, because neither side wants to lose face or be humiliated. And so they would never publicly air that visit unless beforehand it was agreed to happening. What does this mean? The Chinese don't want to be embarrassed on the way to that visit either. So essentially, we just bought ourselves a summer of pleasant Chinese behavior. Now, that can change. We'll go roll up a few spies and they'll get all upset. We'll sign a $14 billion defense deal with Taiwan. They'll be more upset, and maybe even a cancellation. But that is a very, very good sign that we're at least going to play nicely together for the short term.
So an act of good faith and at least good news for now. All right, we'll be watching. General Blaine, Holt, Ryan Bodenheimer, thank you.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
People think news just happens. It doesn't. It happens because there's someone there to capture the moment, to explain it and share it. That's my job. I go where news breaks and give you the facts. Join me for The Record on Newsmax.